Hi! In this tutorial we will see some finishing process with VR media. We will do some color grading, we'll see Lat Log shapes, and finally we will apply some filters like sharpen to enhance the look of the shot. At this point we should clarify something. This tutorial is not a color grading tutorial, it's a basic example of grading in Mistika. We have tutorials for Mistika Boutique explaining in more detail the color toolset, and they work exactly the same for VR. So feel free to take a look to those tutorials if you need more information. In this tutorial we are going to use this timeline with a few shots. As we can see, we have the same shot split in two, and another shot in the middle. We will leave the third shot for the end of the video. Okay, so let's start with the first one. As we can see, we are still using the shot that we used to remove the tripod. In fact, we still have all the effects, and all the stitch metadata in here, so we are working with the original media. And as we have done in previous examples, we are not going to render this image. We are going to make the grading directly. Of course, at some point, depending on the complexity of the project, it can be a good idea to render these shots to be sure that the stitch is good, or the compositing with the vector paint is done in the right way. We want to show here Mistika's timeline's capabilities, and the possibility of working in a non-destructive way in the whole process. But obviously, this depends on the project, our system, or if we have Mistika Ultima or Mistika Boutique, because Mistika Ultima has some special functionalities like Totem in order to have better performance. But again, we are going to use our current stack with original media. What I've done in here is to select 2K as my resolution. One great thing in Mistika is that resolution and frame rate can be changed at any moment with the Mistika config tool, and the project will be adapted to that new resolution. So keeping the aspect ratio, we can just work at 2K, and then change my project resolution to 4K or 6K for the final output. So we're going to leave it in 2K to go faster. Now I'm going to insert a color grade effect. With Mistika Ultima or Boutique, you have one of the most powerful color systems in the market. So you have a full color toolset for your VR project. Primary grading, secondary grading, fixed vectors, curves, gear, etc. We're going to use these tools in a basic way to make a quick grading. Okay, so I'm going to start with the primaries, adding some contrast to the shot. Now I'm going to add some saturation, and as we can see we have some overexposed highlights. So I'm going to open one scope, and if we take a look we have those highlights above the limit. So I'm going to recover them without affecting the rest of the shot. To do that, I come to here to my super whites, and I'm going to put my pivot around 80%. So in that way, I'm going to control only the values over the 80% of my range. And in this way, you can see how we recover those highlights without affecting the rest of the image. Okay, now I'm going to change a little bit the hue of my shot by going to bands and change the hue value here. And finally, for this layer, I go to fixed vectors and I'm going to change a little bit the hue of the sky. Good, now let's create a new layer. And in this layer, I'm going to select these trees in the background to make them look a bit more greenish. So I go to the keyer, and I'm going to select this hue in order to select the forest. As you can see, the selection looks a bit blocky. This is because we are using media with a color depth of 8 bits, so the color resolution is not very great. For this reason, I'm going to add a bit of blur to soften my selection. Okay, once I have it, I go to Fixed Vectors, and I'm going to change the hue from yellow to green. And as you can see, now it looks much better. We can disable and enable the entire color node by clicking in the bypass toggle. Perfect! Now the reason why I have this shot in 2 is because in a real timeline with a normal editing, it's very easy to have this situation. So how can I bring this color correction in the other shot? Well, in a normal workflow in Mistika, you normally put color nodes in all your shots. So now, in the storyboard, with shift click, you can select the other shot to navigate to it, and then with double click in my graded shot, I bring the color correction. Very easy and very fast. Again, you can find tutorials about the storyboard if you want to know all the features. Now let's go to the third shot, which is a bit special. It's a bit special because it's a CGI shot, and in fact it's a multi-layer shot. What happens when you open a multi-layer shot? Well, you cannot see anything. This happens because this shot has multiple layers of information, and Mistika cannot recognize which one is the RGB layer. So the first step is to add a layer root over my clip. Now, in my layer root, in the layer set, I'm going to select my RGB layer. Now we have an image. But as you can see, the image looks really dark. This is because it's in linear, so we want to change the gamma curve of the shot. So let's go to our FX panel, and let's select the unicolor effect. We have multiple tutorials about this effect because it's one of the most important ones in Mistika. It's basically our main color management tool. So in here, I'm going to select linear as my input, and in the output, I'm going to select gamma 2.4 for example. Now this looks better. Okay, so now I'm going to add a grading node, and I'm going to make a quick grading to contrast the image and add a bit of saturation. In a second layer, I'm going to create an interesting effect. We have this window here, and I want to simulate the sun coming through the window in a more clear way. So I go to my window panel, and I'm going to select the shape mode. There are two types of shapes, planar and lat long. A planar shape is a normal shape. So if we create a planar shape to isolate the window, we see that basically creates straight lines between the points. Again, it works as a normal shape. Okay, now let's create a lat long shape. If I do the same thing, we see how the shape adapts automatically to the lat long form of the shot. So with only 4 points, I can select the area that I want to modify. Once I have it, I'm going to increase the feather in these 2 points to add some softness. With this shape, I can go to primary and change the gamma. Now I'm going to create a new layer to see the result without the form of the shape. And as you can see, if we enable the VR mode, we have created the effect that we wanted. If we see the previous layer, we see that the shape is fully adapted to the VR space. As we said, this is a multi-layer shot. So for example, we have information about the depth of the shot. I'm going to create a new layer, navigate inside the vector, select multi-layer, open the depth folder, and select the depth layer. From here, once I enable the highlight, I can control the selection based on the depth, and change the color in the selected area. Of course, this works perfectly well in VR. As a final example of finishing, let's add some sharpening to this shot. So I go to my FX panel, select sharpen, and as we did with the shapes, we're going to change the mode to lat long. And finally increase the value to add more detail to the image. With this final example, it finished this tutorial. We have seen a few finishing tools in Mistika Ultima or Mistika Boutique. Of course, there are many more because at the end this is a finishing system. Again, my recommendation is to take a look to other tutorials, because most of the things explained for normal projects can be applied in VR as well. In the next tutorials, we will see a bit of compositing and stabilization. See you in the next video.